Yet.
Shabbat Shalom. It is just about time for us to begin. We put on our talit. We take a deep breath. We realize that we are now transitioning from the space that we are in into a space of prayer. And some of that is transforming the physical environment around us, discerning what should be in our space of prayer. One thing I have heard is for those that have connected their devices to a television, the sound improves dramatically. So we're working it on our side. You can work on your side too. On page 63, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatzar et adam b'chokmo v'rov v'tekavim nekvim kaolim galui v'derek v'dech hashim yifatech echad mechem o yitatem echad mechem I ashar lehikem u'lamod b'chanecha Baruch atah Adonai v'feich ha'basar mochnei la'asot. We are grateful for the gifts of our bodies that they function. And in a world of pandemic and challenge and strife, the importance of a functioning body feels even more relevant. Soul, you have given me is pure, you created it, you formed it, you breathed into me, and you keep body and soul together. Baruch atah Adonai hamachazir neshama u'tzarim metim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher k'tzam v'timan v'lasov k'divrei Torah ha'yerevna melechenu v'tivrei Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher mechabanu v'kol ha'yamim v'natzonu v'torah. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah. We'll turn now to page 65. I invite you to rise with me for the blessing, acknowledgement of the morning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'tzaddikim alavein bein yom u'bein layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu makom shesani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu makom shesani ben-hurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam bokeach Ephraim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu makom labish aramim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu makom natirat Ephraim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu makom zokech kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mekar hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu makom shesalik v'tzarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamatin v'tzadik aver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael v'guvram. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter tzot yiparah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein le'ayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ma'avir shnei ma'chatai. Yerzeh l'nach ha'oteinu yerzeh l'chatecha. U'lunenu chayom kolach yom l'cheinu chesed ha'rachamim. B'necha v'necharoinu v'diklan chesed tovim. Baruch atah Adonai g'malchutim tovim le'mo Yisrael. Page 66. V'kiratzon, may it be your will, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to protect us this day and every day from insolence in others and from arrogance in myself. Save us from vicious people, from evil neighbors, from corrupt companions. Preserve us from misfortune and from powers of destruction. Save us from harsh judgment. Spare us from ruthless opponents, whether they are of the faith or not. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Turn to page 67. So at the bottom of 69, Amar Rabbi Kama Rabbi Kanina, Mai Dikiv Acharei Adonai Elohechem Tel Eku. What does it mean to follow Adonai your God? V'chi efshar lo adam lechalach acharei shekhinah. Can a person, a human, of flesh and blood, follow the presence of God? Ela l'halach achar midotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Perhaps not, but what we can do is follow the traits, the actions of the Holy One. Ma'ku malbish aromim af ata chalbesh aromim. Just as God clothes the naked, we should clothe the naked. HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'karcholim af ata b'karcholim. God visited the sick, so we can visit the sick. HaKadosh Baruch Hu nichem avelim af ata nachem avelim. The Holy One comforted those who mourn, we can comfort those who mourn. HaKadosh Baruch Hu kavar meitim af ata kavar meitim. The Holy One buried the dead, we can bury the dead. Kaddish Rabbanan, page 71. Yitgadal v'yitkadash v'merabah. V'ilma tizrach rotei v'yamlet machutei. V'kayakon v'mkon kayet kol beit Yisrael. V'galav v'zman karev v'yamru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam u'lemei almaya. Yitbarach v'shtabach v'yitpa'ar v'troma v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei v'kudsha v'riko. La'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata v'naran v'yalma v'yamru amen. Al Yisrael v'Rabbanan v'Yatameihon v'Kol Tamidei Tamideihon v'Kol Man Da'askim Daraita Di v'Yatrach Ben v'Di v'Kol Atar v'Yatar Yehei Lakon Oson Shlomo Rabba Kina v'Chista v'Rachamim v'Chayim Arekim v'Mazor HaRabicha v'Prokana min Kadam v'On v'Yishmaya v'Yamru amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'Chayim Aleinu v'Chayim Tovim Aleinu v'Kol Yisrael v'Yamru amen. Oseh Shalom v'Norma P'u B'Rachama v'Yaseh Shalom Aleinu v'Kol Yisrael v'Yamru amen. May be seated. The song for Shabbat. Hayom Yom Kodesh v'Yitamitam Moshe Shabbat Tovadot. We are now in the month of Elul. We turn to page 80 for the Psalm for the season of repentance, helping us focus our mind to the hard work that we have to do in the coming weeks. Page 81, Mizmor Shir Chanukat, Habayim Lenavi, Naram Kasa, Vayvadim, Zaman. Adonai, Adonai, hear me, Adonai. Be gracious, the one who can help me. site. The mourners, please join with me on page 82. Yitzgadal v'yitzkadash merabah. V'yalmach yitrach rotei v'yamlech machotei. B'chayakol v'makol n'chayet v'chol beit Yisrael. Magalach man karev v'imro. Amen. Yehesh merabah m'vorach le'olam l'omel maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitfa'al v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei v'sham b'riko. La'ena min kol b'rchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata d'maran v'yalma v'imru. Amen. Yehesh lamarabah min shemaya. L'chaim aleinu v'yachulit lev v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'roma. Yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'yachulit lev v'imru. Amen. We all rise together. Page 83. Baruch Shema Rayam Baruch Hu Baruch Hashem Rishit Baruch Hashem Rishit Baruch Hashem Kayem from the Amen. Baruch Hashem Nayam and Antolam Mayla Baruch Hashem Shabbatam Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam v'tishbachom. You may be seated. Lord, May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. Page 88. days of joy equal to the years that you suffer. Your servants will see your power, children will know your glory. Page 90 of We turn to page 92 and rise for the 136th Psalm. Here we have in some ways a summary of our tradition of creation, of slavery and freedom, of establishing Israel as our home. Let all the earth revere Adonai, all who inhabit the world stand in awe, for God spoke, and it came to be, God commanded, and it stood firm. We'll turn to page 96. Imla We're on page 100, the last two Psalms. Where's that? Hallelujah, 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 Amen. Be amen. We rise, page 101. From the book of Nehemiah, you alone are God. You created the heavens, the higher heavens, all their array, the land and all that is on it, the sea and all they contain. You sustain them all the hosts of heaven. The angels revere you. You are Adonai, the God who chose Abram and brought him from Ur of the Chaldees, naming him Abraham and calling him Naaman of Anathah, a faithful servant. Read with me at the bottom of 103. At dawn I seek you, refuge, rock sublime. My morning prayers I offer, and those at evening time. I tremble in your awesome presence contrite, for my deepest secrets lie stripped before your sight. My tongue, what can it say? My heart, what can it do? What is my strength? What is my spirit too? But should music be sweet to you in mortal key, your praises will I sing, so long as breath is in me. Page 104, the breath of all that lives praises you, Adonai our God. Nishmat kol chai, tibrak shim Adonai Eloheinu, Rabbatam. Song could fill our mouths as water fills the sea, could joy flood our tongue with countless waves. Could our lips utter praise as limitless as the sky, and could our eyes match the splendor of the sun? If we could soar with arms like eagle's wings, and run with gentle grace as the swiftest deer, never could we state our gratitude completely for even a 10,000th of the lasting love that is your precious blessing, dearest God, granted to our ancestors and to us. Joshua begins in the middle of page 105. Page 107. 110. Page 111, we speak of God's love for us, and we gather our seats, feeling that divine embrace. We're on page 114. At the bottom of the page, we'll sing Micha Mocha, and then we'll take time for Amidah together. We'll begin on 115b and then continue that after the Kedusha.
Oh
Amidah, we turn to page 138 for Kaddish Shaleh.
grab me a mask, please.
We'll begin the Torah service on page 139. May your favor abide with the people of Israel, and may your redeeming power be revealed to them in your sanctuary. Bless us with your light, and with compassion accept our prayer. May it be your will to guard us, grant us long life and well-being, to count us among the righteous, and to guard us and our families and all your people Israel with compassion. You nourish and sustain all life. You rule over all governments, even kings, for dominion is yours. We continue with Bnai on page 140.
The You may be seated. So this is a work in progress. We're learning how to work together with those that are here in the room and those who are with us spiritually. And so I have to really thank the people who are here today as our next experimenters, helping us to hone our procedures, to make things work. So the other day, Cancer and I and Allison and Joel and a couple others were here figuring out where to stand. So we now have a little podium over here, which is not where you stand for the Aliyah. Exactly. You stand here when you're following along in the Torah, and you should be out of camera range. If you stand just to the left of this tape right here, now everyone should be able to see you. Hi, Mom. And the Aliyot blessings are right here. And I now have, as you register to join us for shul, one of the boxes is to put your Hebrew name. So that way I have a printout on the bima of everybody's Hebrew name, and so then whoever becomes the Aliyot, I don't have to come down again and again and put on the mask and take off the mask and put on the mask and take off the mask. So I think the suggestions we got from last week, and if you see something that will help smooth things out a little bit this week, let us know, both those of you in the room and those of you spiritually in the room. So I'm going to back up just for a second. We are on page 1088 in our Etz Chaim Chumash, Parshat Shoftim, which begins with chapter 16, verse 18 of the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 16, verse 18, with this reminder that we need to have justice. Shoftim are judges, that we appoint magistrates and officials for all the tribes and all the settlements. This is more of the preparation of reaching the land of Israel, and that when we get there, it needs to be done properly. That an essential element of Jewish society is justice. Because we know inevitably, no matter who we are, no matter how hard we try, we all will make mistakes. And then amongst us, we know there are some people that make mistakes intentionally, that they sin against one another and against God. And in the Jewish tradition, one of the very unique factors, I think, is that if I go into somebody's property and I take something from them, I'm not only sinning against the person from whom I took, but also against God. And so on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, as we think about this time of atonement that is ahead of us, we have two acts of atoning. Sorry, Cheryl. I'm almost done. One act of atonement is between the person. When I make a mistake, I have to apologize to the person for whom who I sinned. And then on Yom Kippur and before, I need to go to God and say, God, I sinned against your image by hurting this person. So we'll turn now to page 1088 for chapter 16, verse 18. I'm going to go back where I have Cheryl's Hebrew name and call her to the first Aliyah. And you may notice things are just a little bit different than we would normally do things this week with getting ourselves all together. So the cantor will be reading Torah from the Chumash, and Steve will be following along in the Torah itself, so that way we could have the opportunity for the Aliyot. But God willing, the next time that we open the Torah, it will be in the more traditional fashion. So, again, may the merciful one show mercy to the people that God has always sustained, remembering God's covenant with our ancestors. May God deliver us from evil times, restrain the impulse within us to do evil, and grace our lives with enduring deliverance. May God answer our petition with an abundant measure of kindness and compassion. May God what? Oh, I got backwards. Okay, try it again. Simanacha bat Menacha Yitzchak Halevi Vechana Eta. There we go. Rishon Baruch Shendrachel Yushato Vechana Vechana Vechana
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorah. Baruch Adonai Hamvorah Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Bachar banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Shokim v'shokrim titem lecha v'chosharecha asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha lishvatecha v'shavtu et ha'am mishpat lo tatem mishpat lo takir panim v'lo tikach shochad ki ha'shochad yaver einei chachamim v'salef divrei tzadikim tzeref tzeref tirdof למען תהיה וירשת את הארץ אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך ולא תיתן לך אשרה כל עץ אצל מזבח אדוני אלוהיך אשר תעשה לך ולא תקים לך מצבה אשר שנא אדוני אלוהיך לא תזבח אדוני אלוהיך שור ועשן אשר יבוא מום כל דברה כי תועבת אדוני אלוהיך הוא כי מצא בקרבך ואחד שעריך אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך איש או אישה אשר יעשה את הרע בעיני אדוני אלוהיך לעבור ביתו וילך ויעבור אלוהים אחרים וישתחו להם ולשמש או לירח או לכל צבא השמיים אשר לא ציוויתי והוא גם לך ושמעת ודרשת היטב והנה אמת לכל הדבר נעשתה התועבה הזאת בישראל והוצאת את האיש ההוא או את האישה ההיא אשר עשו את הדבר הרע הזה אל שעריך את האיש או את האישה וסגלתם באבנים ומתו על פי שניים עדים או שלושה עדים יומת המת לא יומת על פי עד אחד יד העדים, תהיה בו בראשונה להמיתו, ביד כל העם באחרונה, וביד טהרה מקרבך. כי פעלה ממך דבר למשפט, בין דם לדם, בין דין לדין, ובין נגע לנגע, דברי ריבות בשעריך, וקמת ועלית אל המקום אשר יבחר אדוני אלוהיך בו, ובאת אל הכהנים הלוויים ואל השופט אשר יהיה בימים ההם, ודרשת והגידו לך את דבר המשפט, ועשית על פי הדבר אשר יגידו לך מן המקום ההוא אשר יבחר אדוני, ושמרת לעשות ככל אשר יורוך על פי התורה אשר יורוך, ועל המשפט אשר יאמרו לך תעשה, לא תעשון מן הדבר אשר יגידו לך ימין ושמאל. והאיש אשר יעשה בזדון ובלתי שמוע אל הכהן העומד ושהן שם את אדוני אלוהיך או אל השופט, ומת האיש ההוא בירכא הרע מישראל, וכל העם ישמעו ויראו ולא יזידו לו.
I'll take 3 steps to the left.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan lanu torat emet b'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We'll pause for Nishabira for those who are ill in our community. If you have a name to add when I pause, please include it. Mishabira Kavachinu B'Takiyachotar Rikha Recholeha Yimaref Yimtachulim. Eliezer ben Tachon Ephraim ben Yosef, Ethel ben Moshe, Ebesider and Techava bat Hanan Levi, Gary Down, Gordon Kingston, Grace Tribiana, Elizabeth Yaakov, Hannah bat Deborah, Hannah bat Eva Franco, Hannah Pesha ben Masha, Hannah Bela bat Ursula Shlomo, Hannah bat Spira, Ursula ben Moshe, Yitzhak ben Lima, Maya ben Shmuel, Jerry Greenstein, Joan Campbell, Judy Bunch, Cross Springman, Ken Flair, Harry Kreisman, Ellen Walden, Evan Yaakov, Liba bat Zev, Dobatko, Alevi Zechana, Lily Cox, Midland, Haber, Lawrence Blair, Makabat Steve, Mark Howerton, Marilyn Goldberg, Monish Ben Yosef, Mordecai Gable, but not David, Moshe Ben Binyamin, Nicole Sager, Norman, Sam Kite, Makabat Sarah, Rhoda Payne, Rick Shapiro, Kabat Haibakaba, Lisa Baylor, Kawela Rishel, Dennis Kunshaman, Michelle Garland, Sharon Lundy, Sharon Gundy, Sharon Kernick, Sheldon Winnie Sephora, Shalom Chaya, Bata Salabatina, Shalom Merriman, Nicolaya, Susan Turner, Stephanie Green, Steve Morse, Susan Ross, Steve William Friedman, Yaakov Eliyahu ben Yosef, and Zed ben Shlomo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eloheinu Alechem, Nachalekam Rocham Otam, Lahazek Legotam, Veislachem, Mehera, Shua, Shlima, Min Shemaim, Rabu Atanafis, Rabu Kotak Shalako Yisrael, Vanomar, Amen. Ya'amod, Yeshi ben David,
Yishai ben David.
Yishai ben David, Aliyah Shmiya.
Go. Baruch Hu Adonai Barach, Baruch Adonai Barach, U'elam Ber, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Kitavo el haaretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten la, v'rishta v'yashavta la, ve'amarta asim alai melech kol hagoyim asher smimotai, והייתה עמו וקרבו כל ימי חייו, למען ילמד לירא את אדוני אלוהיו, לשמור את כל דברי התורה הזאת, את החוקים האלה לעשותם, לבלתי ולבבו מאחיו, ולבלתי סור מן המצווה יבין ושמו, למען יאריך ימים על ממלכתו ובניו בקרב ישראל.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam natah b'tuhenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
So the second Aliyah just shared the blessing or the curse of having a king, depending on how one reads it. And the rabbis debate whether having a king is a mitzvah or just a concession to the desire of people to have some form of higher leadership. But one of the interesting things about a Jewish king as opposed to in other faiths is it is absolutely clear that the king is not all powerful. The king is subservient to the Holy One and must either himself write a Torah or have one placed next to him that he sees the power of God at all times. And that this is a major limit over a hereditary king that is in so many other cultures. So the third Aliyah begins at the bottom of 1093 with chapter 18, verse 1.
Baruch hu Adonai Hambarach. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam V'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Lo yeh b'kohanim ha'amim, kol shevet Levi, talat menachala im Yisrael, Ishe Adonai v'nachalato yochenun, v'nachala lo yeh lo b'kerem echad, Adonai hu nachalato ka'asher diber lo, v'zeh ונתן לכהן הזרוע והחיים והקימה ראשית תגנך כינוסך ויצריך וראשית יצונך תיתן לו כי בו בחר אלוהיך מכל שבטיך לעבוד לשרת בשם אדוני ובניו כל הימים.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam natah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
The fourth Aliyah is on page 1094 in our book. It is chapter 18, verse 6, and we are speaking about some of the role of the Levites and also the concerns of not exactly assimilation, but that as we are with other cultures, we can create some amalgam. And some of them, occasionally, there is good we can learn from those around us, but there is also challenge and pain and violence, and those things we are not interested in. And so we're reminded in this Aliyah and the next of some of those challenges. Ya'amon Yaakov ben Mordechai HaRevi'it.
Baruch Adonai Havarach. Baruch Adonai Baruch Lam Ba'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. ושרת בשם אדוני אלוהיו, ככל אחיו הלוויים העומדים שם לפני אדוני, חלק כחלק יאכלו, לבד ממקרב על האבות, כי אתה בא אל הארץ, אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך, לא תלמד לעשות כתועבות הגויים ההם, לא ימצא בך מעביר בנו ואיתו באש, כוסף כסמים מאונן ומנחש ומכשף, וחובר חבר ושואל אור וידוני ודורש אל המתים, כי תועבת אדוני כל עושה אלה, ובגלל התועבות האלה אדוני אלוהיך מוריש אותם מפניך. תמים תהיה עם אדוני אלוהיך.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu toras emes v'chayei olam notav elokeinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
The fifth aliyah continues with awareness of what's around us and speaks of the possibility of prophets coming up to teach Torah, and see the difference between the prophets of other nations that are looking for signs and symbols and those of ours, which will be only teaching Torah and reminding us how we should live our lives. So we continue on page 1095, chapter 18, verse 14. Yamod lechem ben Eliyahu hamishi.
Baruch Adonai Baruch. Baruch Adonai Baruch Elam Bored. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ki hagoyim ha'ele asher ata yoresh otam el me'onenim ve'el kosmim yishma'u ve'ata Navi mikir mecham me'achecha kamoni yakim lecha Adonai Elohecha elav tishma'un kechol asher sha'arta me'im Adonai Elohecha b'chorev v'yom ha'kahal lo le'mor lo oseh lishmoa et kol Adonai Elohai הגדולה הזאת לא אראה עוד ולא אמות, ויאמר אדוני אלי היטיבו אשר דיברו, נביא אקים להם מקרב אחיהם כמוך, ונתתי דברי בפיו ודיבר עליהם את כל אשר עצבנו, והיה האיש אשר לא ישמע אל דברי אשר ידבר בשמי, אנוכי אדרוש מעמו, אך הנביא אשר יזיד לדבר דבר בשמי, את אשר לא ציוויתיו לדבר, ואשר ידבר בשם אלוהים אחרים, ומת הנביא ההוא, וכי תאמר בלבבך, היכן נדע את הדבר אשר לא דיברו אדוני, אשר ידבר הנביא בשם אדוני, ולא יהיה הדבר ולא יבוא, הוא הדבר אשר לא דיברו אדוני, בזדון דיברו הנביא, לא תגור ממנו, כי יפריט אדוני אלוהיך את הגויים אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך את Adonai Elohecha noten lecha l'rishta, תכין לך הדרך ושילשת את גבול ארצך אשר ינחילך אדוני אלוהיך והיה לנו שמה כורצח וזה דבר הרוצח אשר ינוס שמה בחי אשר יכה את רעהו מבלי דעת והוא לא שונא לו מתמול שלשום ואשר יבוא את רעהו ויעלתו בתים ונדחה ידו בגרזן לכרות העץ ונשב הברזל מן העץ ומצא את רעהו במת הוא ינוס אל אחת הערים האלה וחי כן ירדוף גואל הדם אחרי הרוצח כי יחם לבבו והשיגו כי ירבה הדרך והיכהו נפש ולא אין משפט מוות כי לא שונאהו לא מטבול שלשום על כן אנוכי מצווך לאמור 3 ערים תבדילה ואם ירחיב אדוני אלוהיך את גבולך כאשר נשבע לאבותיך ונתן לך את כל הארץ אשר דיבר לתת לאבותיך כי תשמור את כל המצווה הזאת לעשותה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך ללכת בדרכיו כל הימים ויעשת לך עוד 3 ערים על 3 האלה ולא יישפך דם נקי בקרב ארצך אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך נחלה והיה עליך דמים וכי איש שונא לרעהו וערב לו וקם עליו והיכהו נפש ומת ונס אל אחת הערים האל ושלחו זקני עירו ולקחו אותו משם ונתנו אותו ביד גואל הדם במת לא תחוס עיניך עליו ומידת דם הנקי מישראל וטוב לה.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet l'chaim l'tam b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
So we saw the 3 cities of refuge were increased to 6 as the territory of the Jewish people were expanded or would be expanded. And there's an interesting note at the bottom of 1099 that in the ancient world, if you went somewhere for asylum, it didn't matter if you were innocent or guilty. The intentional, the accidental, the protected anybody who claimed asylum. Felons and debtors enjoyed sanctuary in temples in Greek cities. The biblical law and Torah law came up, our tradition said it doesn't work that way. If you are a murderer, you're not welcome in the city of refuge. And in fact, if you find your way to the city of refuge, they'll send you back to serve justice. It's only if this was an accidental crime, a manslaughter, and really not even a situation where it was totally not your fault, but it still led to the death of another, then you could take refuge. And this is a major shift in the ancient world, because our tradition is saying we have to take responsibility for actions. And you can't just literally get away with murder. So we turn now to the 6th Aliyah at the very bottom of 1099, which is chapter 19, verse 14, where we see that don't move your boundary markers, your landmarks. Don't do something that might seem in secret to gain something for yourself. Even if someone else might not notice that you're stealing from them, you're still stealing from them. Don't do that. Ya'alov, Moshe ben Tzvi, Halevi v'Rod, Elia, Hashishi.
Baruch Hu Adonai Amorah. Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'notan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Lo tasig gelureata, asher gavelu rishonim, v'nakalatcha asher tikha, ba'aretz asher Adonai Elohecha, noten lecha l'rishta, lo yakumu menecha be'is, lekol avon u'lekol chatat, בכל חטא שיחטא על פיהם שני עדים או על פי שלושה עדים יקום דבר כי יקום אין חמאס באיש לענות בו שרה ועמדו שני האנשים אשר להם הריב לפני אדוני ולפני הכהנים והשופטים אשר יהיה בימים ההם ודרשו השופטים היטב והנה אין שקר העד שקר עליו ואחיו ועשיתם לו כאשר זמן לעשות לאחיו וביתרה מקרבך והנשארים ישמעו ויראו ולא יוסיפו לעשות עוד כדבר הרע הזה בקרבך לא תחוז עיניך נפש בנפש עין בעין שן בשן יד ביד רגל ברגל כי תצא למלחמה וראית סוס ורכב עם רב ממך לא תירא מהם כי אדוני אלוהיך עמך המעלך מארץ מצרים והיה כקרוב הם אל המלחמה וניגש הכהן ודיבר אל העם ואמר עליהם שמע ישראל אתם קרבים היום למלחמה על אויביכם אל ירח לבבכם אל תראו ואל תחפזו ואל תארצו מפניהם כי אדוני אלוהיכם ההולך עמכם להילחם לכם עם אויביכם להושיע אתכם ודיברו השוטרים מהעם לאמור מי האיש אשר בנה בית חדש ולא חנכו ילך וישכון לביתו פן ימות במלחמה ואיש אחר יחנכנו ומי האיש אשר נטע כרם ולא חיללו ילך וישכון לביתו פן ימות במלחמה ואיש אחר יחללנו ומי האיש אשר ארס אישה ולא לקחה ילך וישכון לביתו פן ימות במלחמה ואיש אחר ייקחנה וישבו השוטרים לדבר העם ויאמרו מי האיש הירא ופקדו שרי צבאות בראשם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chai olam nota b'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
The seventh aliyah is continuing. We had ended with some mentions of the laws of war, of acknowledging that we don't want someone to go out to war if they're not in the right mindset. To go into battle is a serious endeavor, a challenging endeavor. And if you are so distracted by your new house or your new spouse or where you're just not have the psychological makeup that you can survive a battle, then perhaps it is more dangerous to have you in the battle than to not have you participate at all. And so we continue. The Jewish tradition sees war sometimes as a necessity, but it never sees it as a positive. Peace is always preferred to violence unless there is no alternative. And so even when you are prepared to attack a town, even in a mitzvah war, even in a required war, a commanded war, you still have to give them a chance to negotiate peace first. And only then can you go into battle. So page 1103, chapter 20, verse 10. Tamod בת-שבע בת חיים עלייה שביעית.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. כי תקרא להילחם עליה וקראת אליה לשלום, והיה אם שלום תנך ופתחה לה, והיה כל העם הנמצא בה יהיו לך למס ועבדוך. ואם לא תשלים עמך ועשתה עמך מלחמה וצרת עליה ונתנה אדוני אלוהיך בידיך והכית את כל זכורה לפי חרב רק הנשים והטף והבהמה וכל אשר יהיה בעיר כל שללה תבוז לה ואכלת את שלל אויביך אשר נתן אלוהיך לך, כן תעשה לכל הערים הרחוקות ממך מאוד, אשר לא מערי הגויים האלה הנה, רק מערי העמים האלה אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך נחלה, לא תחיה כל נשמה. כי אחריהם תחרימם החיתי והאמורי הכנעני והפריזי החיבי והיבוסי, כאשר צילך אדוני אלוהיך, למען אשר לא ילמדו אתכם לעשות ככל תועבותם אשר עשו לאלוהיהם, וחטאתם לאדוני אלוהיכם, כי צאו אל עיר ימים רבים להילחם עליה לתופסה. לא תשחית את עצה לנוח עליו גרזן, כי ממנו תאכל ואותו לא תפרוץ, כי האדם את השדה לבוא מפניך במצור. רק עץ אשר תדע, כי לא עץ מאכל הוא, אותו תשחית וחרעת ובנית מצור על העיר ויעמדו אל הערים אשר סביבות החלל, והיה העיר הקרובה אל החלל, ולקחו זקני העיר ההיא עגלת בקר, אשר לא עובד בה, אשר לא משכה באור, והורידו זקני העיר ההיא את העגלה אל נחל איתן, אשר לא יאבד בו ולא יזרע, וערכו שם את העגלה בנחל, וניגשו הכהנים בני לוי, כי בם בחר אדוני אלוהיך לשרתו ולברך בשם אדוני, ועל פיהם יהיה תורים וכל נגע, ועוז זקני העיר ההיא הקרובים אל החלל ירחצו את ידיהם אל העגלה הערופה בנחל, וענו ואמרו ידינו לא שפכו את הדם הזה, ועינינו לא ראו כפר לעמך ישראל אשר פדית אדוני, ואל תיתן דם נקי בקרב עמך ישראל, וניכפר להם הדם, ואתה תבער הדם הנקי מקרבך, כי תעשה הישר בעיני אדוני.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. We rise for the Haftarah. We rise for the Haftarah.
יתגלה ויקרא שמי רבה, ועבד יברא כרוצה, וימליך מלכותו דגמי, כל עמי כל עמנו בישראל. בגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן, שמי רבה וברך, ועלה ועליה. יתברך משמח פרצו ונעשה ויתהדר ביטל ויתהלל, שמי קודשה ואימו לאלה במקום מגעתה ושירתה, תנגעתה ונגמתה, דמירה בעלמה, ואמרו אמן.
So, answer if you can call me for the Matzah. You may be seated.
יעמוד מכתיב.
The Matzah reading repeats with chapter 21, verse 7. This is the oath that the elders of the town say when they realize that they were not able to stop the loss of an individual, someone who died in between the towns, and this is their act of atonement. Baruch Adonai Hamvacha. Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vahed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yadu gabru yadeinu lo shafchu et haדם hazeh b'einenu lo na'u kaper. Amcha Yisrael asher padita Adonai ve'al titen dam naki b'kerev Amcha Yisrael v'nikaper lachem haדם v'yata tiba'er haדם הנקי בקרבך כי תעשה הישר בעיני אדוני.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
So we'll rise for the raising and dressing of the Torah, which is going to be kind of a solo endeavor today.
Bezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe v'nei Bnei Yisrael al pi
1108. And it's the Haftarah for Shoftim from the book of Isaiah, chapter 51, verse 12, through chapter 52, verse 12. And it's interesting for our tradition, generally the language is quite sparse, it's quite thin. We have to have the tradition to help us get some of the hidden details. And yet every once in a while words are repeated. And our tradition teaches us that when there is that repetition, it is vital. It is teaching us something. So in our Torah reading this week, we said, Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdof. That justice you will pursue. That it's not enough to have it out there and to go after it, but that you really have to work for it. And here in this Haftarah, Anochi, Anochi, Hu Menachem, that I, God, I am here to comfort you. Rouse yourself. Hitorari, Kumi Yerushalayim, that double phrase we think of in Lachadodi as well. That we have to work. It doesn't just happen that we wake up and are excited for the day. We have to rouse ourselves and push ourselves to have that enthusiasm and that energy. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'minim tovim ratzav v'divrei emet v'emet. Baruch atah Adonai, abocher b'torah u'mosheach u'b'Yisrael amo v'yamel tzedek. Anochi, Anochi, Hu Menachem, Mi'ad Tir'i Menah Shamo, U'meben Adam Atir Yinathem, V'tishkach Adonai Osecha, Note Shamayim Yoser Aretz, V'tfachet Amin Kol Hayom, Mipnei Chamat HaMetzi, Kasher Konei Lashli, Vayeh Chamat HaMetzi, Micharto El Yipachteach, V'lo Yamol L'shachach, V'lo Yechzar Lachmo, V'anochi Adonai Elohecha, Rogayam Yamugala, V'retzot Shemo, V'yasim Devarai B'picha, V'beter Yadi Ketzitaicha, V'linto Hashamayim V'lisol Ha'aretz, V'lemor Letzion Amiatam. Hitorari, Torari, Kumi Yerushalayim, Asher Shatit Mi'ad Adonai Kos Hamato, Et Kavat Kos Atarela, Shatit Matzi, Ein Menachela, Mikol Banim Yelata, Me'en Mazik B'yada, Mikol Banim Gedelam, Shtayim Menachrotaich, Mi'anola, Ashor Ve'ashever, Ve'arav Ve'acher Mi'ana, Me'banai, V'cho Shachvo, Berosh Kol Hotzot, Katot Michmar, Hamalim Kamat Adonai, Garat Elohai, Lachem Shemina Zot Aniyah, Ushkura Zolomiyain, Ko Amar Adonai Adonai, Velochai Yarev Amo, Hine Lakachti Miyadeh Et Kos Atar Eleh, Et Kubarat Kos Kamati, Lo Tosifi Lishtot Ha'om, V'tamtiha B'yad Nogayim, Asher Amru L'nafshech Shechi V'navora, V'tasimi Ka'aret Kaveh, V'kachot La'obrim, Uri, Uri, V'psi Uzek Zion, Tivshi bigdei tifartet, Yerushalayim ir hakodesh, Kilo yotzi, Yavo bachor, Aral betamei. Hinari me'afar, Kumi shivi Yerushalayim, Hipatchi mostrei tavareh, Shviya bat Zion, Kikol mahar Adonai, Klinam nimkartem, V'lo b'kesef tigaenu, Kikol amar Adonai Elohim, Mitzrayim yirada miberosha laborsham, Ve'ashor ve'abet hasakom, Ve'atam alikol ne'om Adonai, Hilukach ami hinam, Moshlam yalelolim Adonai, V'tamid kol hayom shemi benoah, Lechem yeda ami shemi, Hey, v'yom ha'u, Yemi hu ha'metaber ha'ineni, Mano ale'alim, Rangei mevaser, Mashmi ha'shalom, Nevaser tov, Mashmi ha'yeshua, Omer Etzion, Malach Elohim, Kol tofayet, Nasu kol yachtav yironeinu, Ki ayin ve'ayin yiro, Meshuv Adonai Tzion, Pitzku ranenu yachtav, Harvot Yerushalayim, Ki necham Adonai amo gal Yerushalayim, Asaf Adonai et Torah kadsho, Le'nei kol hagoyim, Baruch kol ha'seyaret, Et Yeshuat Eloheinu, Suru Seo misham, Tamei al tigahu, Seo metocha, Kivaru nosei kalei Adonai, Ki lo v'pasom tetzehu, Omnut nosal lo telechon, Ki olech lifnechem Adonai, V'omatzechem Elokei Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol olamim, tzadik v'chol dorot, Hayalan ne'eman haomer v'yosei ha'medaber b'chayim, shechol levarav v'nimat tzedek, Ne'eman atah Adonai Eloheinu, v'ne'manim b'dorecha, v'dorecha mivarecha kol yeshuv b'rekam, Ki ha'melech ne'eman v'rachaman atah baruch atah Adonai, Hayalan ne'eman v'chol levarav, V'chein otzim tibekleinu, v'ne'met Hoshia ben Rabbi Aminu, baruch atah Adonai, V'tamech Zion b'banecha, V'amcheinu Adonai Eloheinu, v'eliyahu hanavi avdecha, V'motu petavim b'shgechecha, V'merayavo v'yakel yimenu, Al kiso lo yesh etzar lo yinchlu oreim ekvolo, Ki b'shem kachcha mishpat lo shelo yikvenenu le'olam v'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen David, V'latorah v'lavotah v'lemim b'yom ha'shabbat hazeh, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד לא תפארם על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יהיה תורה שמבט כי כל התמיד לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת אמן. I'm saying Shakiyana for the privilege of saying the Haftarah with a blessing for me for the first time in quite a while. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehachiyanu v'timanu v'higanu lazman hazeh. We turn now to page 148, Yakum Porkam, the blessing for our community.
Yekum Porkam Mishemaya. HaKadosh Baruch Shalem Zlam, V'yasir mehem kol machara,
and for all who exercise justice and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony, to banish hatred and bigotry, and to safeguard the ideals and the free institutions of the pride and glory of our country. May this land, under your providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen. Page 149. Avinu Shabbat Hu Yisrael v'Golo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmicha Tzulatenu. Hagen Alecha b'Frat Avdecha, Ufrot Alecha Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Orcha v'Mitkal Erashecha Savrecha V'Avdecha, V'Taknei Beitat Olav Mazanecha. Hazek Yitidei Mignei Eretz Kashenu, V'Nilem Eloheinu Yeshua, V'Ater Netzachon Tetzrein, V'Natata Shalom Ba'aretz, V'Simchat Olam Nosha, V'Nomar, Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated for just a moment. We turn to Ashrei, page 161.
Ashrei Ashrei Techa, Yalu Parsela.
Here. Return the Torah to the ark, page 153. So for many rabbis, this Shabbat brings joy. I have colleagues who spend their careers focused mainly on social justice, fighting inequality, fighting for the rights of all people. And this parsha is the rallying cry. With its command of tzedek tirdof, justice you shall pursue, it is a clarion call to action. And like the shofar that we hear each morning in Elul, it's a reminder of our responsibilities as Jews. As Jews, not only are we commanded to celebrate the festivals, but to ensure that our entire community can celebrate. And last week, when we read some of that sacred calendar, there was the reminder that we all bring our own gifts and our own talents to the temple, to the synagogue, to the places of our gathering, while also ensuring that everyone, from the poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich, could celebrate the festival completely. Recently, I was talking to someone, a congregant, about a fundamental difference perhaps between Judaism and Christianity. And while faith is certainly important in both religions, for Judaism, action is required. And it's funny because I was just reading before the service tomorrow, this morning, a essay from Rabbi Jacob Pezachowski, prominent thinker on the liturgy and also a prominent Reform rabbi, but born in the German Orthodox tradition. And he wrote an article about priest and prophet, faith and action. And he said the challenge of Judaism, in some ways, to Christianity is that it's not an either or. Some see Christianity as the religion of faith and Judaism as the religion of action, but Judaism says there's no clear distinction. Action is faith. That to show our compassion for others, to live Torah, that is a demonstration of faith. One way we might do that in a small way is that any other year, Rebecca and I would be sponsoring a Kiddush this week. Sunday's our wedding anniversary, so instead of going out for dinner, instead of going to see the show we would have seen Thursday night, instead we're going to celebrate with the Minyonaires. We're going to have a deli dinner, and we're going to eat in front of the computer. We're going to see one another and say, give thanks for those who on a regular basis make prayer, make action part of their lives. And as I thought about our anniversary, I'm thinking about love. I thought about the prophet Amos, who says, let love and justice flow like a mighty stream, let peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea. And I thought about that prayer not just because of the challenges in this world today, but because of its message. For peace we need both justice and love. Not one, not the other, but both. We need to balance compassion and fairness, justice. If we are totally and letting that compassion totally flow, we can have compassion even at the time when we need justice. And yet, if we are so focused on justice and equity and fairness, we may forget about our compassion. We need both together. Together, they bring peace. Together, they preach shleimut, wholeness. And peace won't come until all people see the importance of working together compassionately with love and also focus on the need for that truth and justice. So some people that I'm looking at spiritually and physically have been married at some point in their lives. And in a marriage, honesty is important. Faithfulness is important. Love is important. The rabbi saw that shalom bayit, peace within a home, is a primary Jewish value. We're obligated to treat our spouses well, to show them respect, to care for one another, to make sure that their needs are fulfilled. A ketubah, the wedding contract, says of the husband that he needs to provide food and clothing and shelter, and also sexual satisfaction as determined by her. Traditionally, she was supposed to help him with the being fruitful and multiplying part, which interestingly enough is a command that is only applicable on the woman, not the man. In case you were wondering, men are not required to be, the other way around. It's commanded only on the man and not the woman. Men are required to be fruitful and multiply, women are not. But there is generally some kind of cooperation required for that endeavor. You know, when I was in school, Rebecca's work ensured that our daily needs were met. And I can tell you that since we've been married, the way I dress is a heck of a lot better than it was before. Today, we see those obligations as mutual. We care for one another. In some households, one spouse may make more than another. And I don't know that the gender for those couples that are in two-gender marriages, that it really matters which spouse is the primary breadwinner. As long as the house is covered, who cares? As long as there is a covenant between the two of love and respect and shared purpose. So maybe the rabbis were romantics, but they said that peace within the home, shalom bayit, was so essential. They suggest that even occasionally, the white lie may be essential to that peace. And I don't know if the rabbis were thinking, yes, dear, I did hear what you were saying, and I'll get right on it as the little white lie. But the prime example in the Talmud is that when God tells Sarah she's going to give birth to a son, well, at 90 years old, she's not so convinced. And she said, after I'm so old, shall I have pleasure, my husband being old too. But when Abraham asked God, why did Sarah laugh? God cuts out a little bit of that. He only shares the part of the message that said, well, I have a child, now that I am old, meaning Sarah. God does not mention that Sarah said, hey, Abraham, you're old too. The rabbis note this omission of Abraham's age out of God's concern for Abraham and Sarah's shalom bayit. So when I talk to people about marriages, about anniversaries, especially after decades of marriage, I often ask them what their secret is. What made it that relationship could last for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, I've even seen 70 a couple times. What makes it work? When people change, we grow. Now, ultimately, I believe that our neshama, our soul, is the same as it is when we first meet our spouse. But the lifestyle that we live may be different. The opportunities that we have may have grown or shrunk over the course of our lives. If we have children or not in the house, it changes the dynamics incredibly. So speaking to one couple, both said united together one word: compromise. Patience could also be useful in there. And in Hebrew we have the idea dan lachafskut, to look and judge the other with the best intention. So instead of saying, "Oi, they didn't take the trash out because they wanted to wait and see if I was going to take the trash out," or I put the dishes in the dishwasher wrong, which you would be surprised, the dishes in the dishwasher comes up in counseling more than almost anything else in the world. That's not me saying that. That's studies of many counselors. It's amazing how much people care about where the dishes are. I just want them clean. But when we imagine that the person is doing something in our best interest, and that we are doing something in their best interest, and sometimes our communication we got to work on a little bit, maybe it comes out a little bit differently. When we assume the best of one another, we may occasionally be wrong. It does happen. Sometimes we were a little spiteful, even in a marriage. But most of the time, we'll be happier and more hopeful for the future when it is the two of us spouse and spouse united against the world, we can do anything. And when we assume the worst, we can spark bitterness and increase resentment. So which would we rather choose? Do we want to be, in a marriage, are we so focused on the justice of how many times did you take out the trash? Or are we focused on the compassion? It was a long day. I was tired. I'll do it for you today. So I heard a great story from Mitch Albom. He wrote Tuesdays with Maury. He had another book called Have a Little Faith. And in that book, he parallels two stories. One of an African-American preacher who had started out with a life of crime and turned his life around to make his hometown in Detroit a better place. And the other story that he shares is of Rabbi Lewis, the father of Rabbi Lewis who just retired in Atlanta. Rabbi Lewis was a rabbi at a synagogue in New Jersey for many, many, many years, and the synagogue where Mitch grew up. And after Mitch wrote Tuesdays with Maury, his childhood rabbi called him and said, "I want you to do my eulogy." And he said, "Look, I write books, I'm a sportscaster. I kind of do the Jewish thing, but don't you want a rabbi to be at your funeral, to teach, to share the Torah?" And he said, "No, I want you, Mitch." And so Mitch, just like he did with Tuesdays with Maury, he flew back to New Jersey from Detroit on a regular basis and met with his childhood rabbi to really get to know him. They went through papers and things over the years until such time as it was time to deliver the eulogy. And one time he was out to dinner with his rabbi and wife, and he crashed their anniversary dinner. And it had been something like 60 years. And somebody else came over and said, "Mazel tov, Rabbi, how long have you guys been married?" And his wife interrupted and said, "Well, we've been married for 30 happy years." And the person kind of gave them a look and said, "But haven't you been married for 60 years?" And she said, "Well, Monday was a good day. Tuesday? Wednesday was great, and you can't even tell me how wonderful Shabbos was. But then Sunday, he had a funeral, he had this. In all of our lives, we have that joy and sadness. In all of our relationships, we have that joy and sadness. So the question is, where are we looking? So Shalom Bayit is a vote for compassion, for love, over justice. Just as on Rosh Hashanah, we ask God to sit in the throne of compassion instead of the throne of justice. So whether we count how many times we took out the trash, or not, or who loaded the dishwasher correctly, maybe we just don't count. To me, this parsha is a place for us to look for justice in the world, but in our home, let's focus on compassion. Let's work together and let love overflow anything else. Shabbat Shalom. We'll continue with the Musaf service. We rise for the Chatzi Kaddish, page 155.
Baruch
Rachel Schneider, Morris Olitsky, Rose Kellmacher, Dorothy Zatlin, Allegri Freisner, Sarah Messing, Harry Plaster, Sadie Narotsky, Rachel Frankel, Hetty Krolman, David Mensch, Arlen Halpin, Sarah Gershuni, Willie Reif, George Krolman, Henry Lamport, Irma Meyer, Jacob Fletchuk, Joseph Rappaport, Renee Greenbaum, Betsy Gristmark, Isidore Martinfeld, Faye Foreman, Jean Gladstein, Anne Fries Gross, Sonia Suskin Gross, Gerald Reingold, Louis P. Greenberg, Francine Shepard, and Sidney Marbanel. In their memory, we turn to page 184 and praise God's name. Yitzgadal, Yitzgadal, Shemei Rabah.
Amen.
Yalma, Tidrat, Rotei, Yamlet, Mapotei. B'chayetron, B'chayetron, B'chayet, B'chol Beit Yisrael. Magala, B'chman Karib, B'chayet. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabah, Borach, Le'olam, Olomei Olomaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yishomam, V'yitnaseh. V'yitazar, V'yitalel, V'yitalal, Shmei, V'yitkushah, V'yitkushah. La'ima, Minkol, V'yirchatav, V'shiratav. Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Demaram, V'yalma, V'yimru. Amen. Yehesh, Lamarab, Amik Shemaya. L'chaim, Aleinu, V'yalcho Yisrael, V'yimru. Amen. V'seh Shalom, V'yimrama.
Amen.
And if you do have a yard site this week, I encourage you to join us in our daily minion virtually, where we'll have an opportunity to hear you share a little bit about the person that you are remembering. So we wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. We're going to turn to Adon Olam now on page 187. After Adon Olam, I'll give one final bracha, and then invite those who are physically here to sort of file out like an airplane, like here back to front. And then just as a reminder, the mic will still be out for another few minutes. So I encourage you to go directly outside, and if you want to speak at all, distance outside, not in the lobby. So for all of you at home, you can talk to whoever you want, wherever you are. So, page 187.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Lo Yitzir Nivra Yirei Nazar V'Etzoko Azar Melech Shemo Nikra Azar Melech Shemo Nikra V'Yamarim Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Make the study of Torah regular and primary for you. Say little, do much, and greet each person with panim yafot, with a joyful face. So as I think about the teachers and the students who this week will be going back to school in person, going back to school online, going back to school at home, may it be a year of joyful learning. And even as there are these challenges of the moment, may it be a year of blessing for us all. I wish you all Shabbat Shalom.
I'm going to take one of these home and put them around because they're coming in at a lower level than the first two outlines.
Shabbat Shalom. Take care. Have a good day.